Underway right here in the Savannah. My name is Zacchaeus, and I'm
I don't want
the
to sit
narrator
down.
here today on the river. I help run the crew here on the Georgia Queen. So just know quite a few things about this river, about the city itself. So,
Thank you.
I'm down to be talking a little bit with you guys.
You want to see Kathy?
Maybe
I don't bite.
Wildlife we might look out for and talk.
Thank you.
Certainly quite a bit about
Thank you.
history. Obviously, Savannah is quite the historic city, right? Probably the main reason why most of you came to visit our old city, to see that architecture, to learn about the heritage. Riverfront's no exception for sure. Plenty of landmarks here that deserve a bit of story time. So I'll teach you a bit of history this afternoon for sure. We're also going to talk about the port economy. You guys are actually in quite the healthy port, very important one as far as the country's concerned. And so I'll talk a bit about that industry, sort of unpack how the port functions here in the river. But folks, to start out though, to begin this journey, I actually want to talk a little bit about the river itself, about where you guys find yourselves here today. So like I said, y'all are on the Savannah River this afternoon.
Savannah. Oh, there's
You know
the
what,
bridge.
friends? I do take a moment to clarify that. I reiterate that you're on the Savannah because, well, this is what I find. I think that a lot of people come to visit our old city here. I think they may have just a little bit too much to drink the night before, maybe even the morning of. They
Really?
drink in here and believe with all of their heart that they're on the Mississippi River. And I wish I was joking about that one, but I'm not. And they sort of look over the waters majestically and, I don't know, maybe imagine themselves in a Mark Twain novel or something. I'm not sure. At any rate, that is indeed much further west. You guys are on the Savannah today. Savannah River begins in a little place called Hartwell, Georgia. That's 300 miles up the river from here, which is where we're starting this journey, by the way, guys. We're sailing up the river towards the river source. That's how we're starting the journey. Then it goes down through Augusta, Georgia. Many of you will be very familiar with Augusta. That's, of course, where the Masters Tournament is hosted every year. That beautiful club there in Augusta. That's 130 miles up the river ahead of us. The river then flows down through Savannah, where we are here today, and then out to the sea, out to the Atlantic Ocean, which is only about 15 miles downriver, or 15 miles behind you. So you guys are pretty close to the ocean right now, and honestly, folks, that proximity to the coastline, to the Atlantic, is relevant to bring up within the context of our journey today, really, because here in the port, friends, we're continuously finding ourselves incumbent to the tide. Here in the river, I'm talking customs, culture, boat handling, navigation. All of these things are really implicated by the tidal swings that we experience on a daily basis. We have tidal swings that happen about every 6 hours or so. There's 2 low tide and 2 high tide swings that happen every day. And they have all sorts of impacts here in the river. We notice that the speed of the current will change with them. The depth of the river will change. The depth changes upwards of 10 feet between low tide and high tide. So it's
10
pretty
feet.
significant
Wow.
depth change that takes place.
10 feet.
Also, folks, the literal direction of the current changes too. So just to illustrate this for you guys, at this very moment, folks, we're currently experiencing what's known as the flood tide. Right now, the river's flooding, whereby the water here in the channel is actually running in from the ocean behind us. So we're actually sailing with the current right now. But folks, in a few hours, when it begins to ebb, the ebb tide begins, then we will have water running out to sea at 180 degrees, changes its direction, begins to run out to the ocean. That's the difference between the flood tide and the ebb tide. That, of course, creates a mixture in the water, which affects the composition, right? Because what we have is brackish here, right here, seeing it in its breadth. Great example of the port economy.
Oh, the cranes
you
right
guys
there.
are actually sitting and standing in the 3rd busiest shipping port in the country. It's also the largest
3rd
and
busiest.
fastest growing container port in particular. Now, I'm going to dive a little bit more in depth into that container traffic later on in the cruise. I'll talk a bit more in depth and unpack how that container industry
Got a
works.
lot of
But
cranes.
for now, folks, I just kind of want to highlight the bridge as such a good example
Right.
of the port. Obviously, an iconic piece of our city's skyline. It's the 2nd largest bridge in the state of Georgia. But friends, for a moment, I want to bring your attention not to the bridge itself, together the series of towers right next to it, right underneath it on either side.
You go.
You might
Go
notice
ahead.
a sequence of towers. They're holding nothing up at the moment. Those actually held the previous bridge in the 1950s. Now, friends, what happened was the 1980s happened. The 1980s brought a lot of things to the country, to the society. But one thing for sure that the 80s brought to Georgia here in South Georgia was a boom of the port economy. Guys, in the 80s, the shipping traffic is growing in volume and in size. And by the late 80s, 2 vessels had physically struck the bridge. They struck the old bridge.
Right.
So obviously, folks, that was quite a dilemma, right?
Struck
That was
the bridge.
A situation to confront, to contend with. And ultimately, what was decided was to continue to invest in the shipping industry. Guys, they saw what it was doing for this area, the country at large.
That's probably when they built this new bridge right here.
The town this year was finished.
In the
Brought
80s.
the clearance here in the port from 135 feet over high tide to 185 feet over high tide. 50 feet improvement. Amazing improvement. We love the bridge. Awesome accomplishment. But folks, I do find it necessary to remind you that was in 1991. 1991, a few decades have rolled around.
91, that bridge, the small one got knocked down and they put the big one on.
Crewmen stand on the top of their ships, sort of like I am now here on the Wheat Bridge. They reach up and touch the underside of the bridge.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. If there's any teachers on the boat today, it sort of reminds me of when a middle schooler's running through the hallway.
It feels good for a minute.
Touch the doorway. Slap
Run!
the backboard. That's what it makes me think of anyway. Now, folks, obviously that's going to get just a bit too close, right?
Stay there, honey. I'll be back.
But fret not, everybody. Penn has hit paper. Yet another project has been relit. Folks, in early 2025, they're actually going to begin to incrementally raise the bridge once again. They're going to raise the clearance.
Raise that bridge
once
again?
more. An initial 20 feet.
Wow.
Allowing that port economy to continue to grow for decades.
Gonna raise that
to come,
bridge even more, huh?
allowing us to impact the U.S. economy in an even more prolific way than we are now.
All right.
But folks, I'll tell you, even before that, before billions are invested into the port over the coming decade, before that project even gets underway, even at this very moment, bringing well over 500,000 jobs to this area, pouring billions into the economy, and impacting 27 different states that equate 71% of the U.S. economy that's actually benefiting from this very port. So we're thrilled to see those figures come in the coming years as those investments roll out. And, you know, I think the bridge is obviously a big piece of the visual identity of Savannah. But I also think it's a perfect symbol for the growth of that port economy here in Savannah. Great opportunity to go through the bridge. And at the very moment, though, we are reapproaching River Street. We're going to be sailing back alongside it for the next several minutes. This first stretch of River Street, folks, that we are approaching, this is known as Plant Riverside. Plant Riverside. Named thusly because it actually used to be a real power plant. This was a coal-fired plant here in Savannah. The first of its kind here in Savannah. And today what you're looking at is an acquisition of the luxury hotel, the JW Marriott. That's what you're looking at today. Now, you guys, you don't have to be staying in the Marriott to enjoy a lot of what they have for the public. You can walk right into the Marriott. They've got a museum with a dinosaur that hangs from the ceiling. There's gifts and artifacts in there. Many great restaurants and bars too, indoor, outdoor, rooftop. As a matter of fact, folks, the rooftop bar in particular, the Electric Moon. That's under the smokestacks up there. Guys, if you'd like to mix playground equipment with alcohol, they built that bar just for you. They had you in mind because it has a slide that goes down from the bar into a backyard rooftop area where there's even more playground equipment for inebriated adults specifically.
Inebriated adults.
So folks, if that's all you've ever dreamed of, call your insurance agent, get an Uber, have a good time. It's also been coined the entertainment district of Savannah. That means you're just seeing a lot of live music, acrobatic performances, light shows, that sort of thing, especially on the weekends. So Plant Riverside, in effect, is really just a great place to just enjoy the downtown life out here on the water, next to the rest of River Street. The back side of Plant Riverside is a bit more connected to the historic aspect of the riverfront. Speaking of which, as Flint Riverside recedes, as we are passing by the Marriott, we are getting a great, better look at some of the more historic structures of the riverfront, many of which date back to the early 1800s, some of them the mid-late 1700s. Many of these structures on the riverfront function as cotton warehouses during the early 1800s. Some of them even are comprised of ballast stones from English ships. As early as the 1600s, as far as the origin of the stones. Some very old English stones on the riverfront. Now, we are getting a bit of a glaring exception to the historic nature of these structures with the Hyatt Regency, right? A sandstone-colored structure here. I think it's ironic, folks. One of the most modern structures on the riverfront, sitting atop the oldest landmark in the area, period. The Hyatt Regency is actually on the very spot where General James Edward Oglethorpe's Foot walked off of the boat and onto what we would now call American soil in 1733 to establish Savannah.
1733, huh?
On the riverfront actually has one of the more modern structures atop it. But as we pass by the Hyatt Regency,
Other people on their little
City Hall
outside windows.
Here from the Gold Dome.
That's
that
cool.
probably caught many of your eyes downtown. The Gold Dome.
Hyatt Regency, that'd be a place to stay. Right there on the
That
riverfront.
is a real functional municipal building. That is our functioning City Hall here in Savannah. And the gold leaf on top is in fact real gold on the top of the dome here. That was placed there to commemorate the fact that Savannah was indeed the first sitting capital of the state of Georgia. It was actually the first planned city of the United States. It was heavily, meticulously laid out
farther out
in order to fortify this area against the Spanish. It was a heavily meditated plan. That's one reason why if you were to slightly zoom out on Google Maps, you would notice how incredibly laid out the city is. North, south, east, and west, the bluff overlooking the river, the 22 squares. That being said, that Savannah would have been a very intuitive choice for the first capital to be established.
That's where we parked right there.
Now, folks, just a smidgen of geography for you guys. Which, by the way, folks, if you're not from the South, smidgen is a unit of measurement. It means a little bit. It's like a skosh. That's a good word for you if you like to cook. A little bit of geography. The river here, guys, for most of its life, functions as the dividing line between Georgia and South Carolina. Actually functions as a state line for most of its length. Now, that is the case,
It's a
however,
big piece of wood in the water there.
looking up port side, we're in a small exception right now. Looking off the left, if you notice the Savannah Convention Center, the Westin Hotel, guys, all of this over here is what's known as Hutchinson Island, Georgia. It's part of Georgia. It's got a golf course over there on the island. They've got a racetrack on the island. And folks, all of this is really notable because Hutchinson Island is what's referred to as a man-made island. Guys, the island over here is a product of over 200 years worth of dredging material poured into the island. You see, guys, 2 centuries ago, it was just a little bit of marsh in the middle of the river. And after 200 years of it being dredging happening, it's over doubled in size. 7 miles long today, a mile wide. My favorite thing about the island, however, folks, has to do with a bit of its history. In the 18th century.
Alright, let's stop at about 15 minutes. Please like and subscribe, and I'll put more videos on in a little bit here. Thank you, people. Please like and subscribe before I can put more videos on. I'm trying to get better, but I had to left my tripod at home at my camper.